Today we're continuing on in our series called Soundtracks. Over the course of this series, just to kind of catch you up in a sentence or two, really what we're doing is we're trying to think about what we think about, right? We're trying to think about what we think about. We're trying to challenge our soundtracks, the soundtracks that play in our thinking, the thoughts that tend to play again and again and again and again in our heads that may be keeping us stuck. Because not every soundtrack's a good soundtrack in our thoughts. Because as we've been discovering, our lives move in the direction of our strongest thoughts. That's just the bottom line. It's true for every single one of us. And here's what we're going to do today. And here's the question we're going to try to wrestle with today. What do you do when the negative soundtracks become unbearably burdensome? It's not just a little negative thought. It begins to weigh you down. What do you do when the soundtracks lead to depression? What do you do when it feels like you almost have a heavy sense of darkness that settles in over your thoughts? And how do we help others? How do we help people that we love when their soundtracks have crossed the line and thrown them into mental health struggles? I don't think I need to build a case for why we have to talk about issues related to mental health here, but in case I do, let me just throw a few stats out to you. You know, 1 in 4 Americans suffers from a diagnosable mental health struggle. Guys, that's a lot of us in the room right now. It's a lot of us. And that's on any given year. So that means more of us, we may not be in the throes of it now, but we have been in the past. Here's another stat. Depression rates are up 29% in the last few years. I mean, it's just increasing at an astronomical rate. Here's another stat. You know, 35% of adults never receive care for depression. That means a lot of us in the room right now, we're going about this alone. And here's the most heart-wrenching one for me. Suicide rates are up 30% over the last few decades. Since the year 2000, they're up 30%. Now listen, I'm not trying to scare you with any of this. I'm trying to paint a picture of reality right now. And the reality is that mental health, and in particular depression, man, it touches every single one of us in this room right now. It doesn't matter where you are. Whether we are the ones right now that are struggling or it's someone we know is struggling, it touches every single one of us. And there should be no better place, there should be no safer place to talk about these issues than here at church, where we can actually seek hope together, where we can be honest about the reality that we all go through seasons of struggle at some point. The last thing people need is a fake church. That is the last thing people need, where we skip over the hardest parts of life, like we just ignore them like they aren't there. They're there. And so we've got to talk about how we can move forward when the broken and negative soundtracks have grown so loud in our thinking that it's actually began to affect our mental health. This is what we're going to talk about these next few weeks. Today we're going to focus in on depression. And to guide our conversation today, I just want to tell you a story. I want to tell you a story that I personally think is one of the most fascinating stories in all of the Bible. And as you'll see, this passage, it is so honest, it is so real and raw, and it is so helpful for any of us who have gone through or are going through mental illness and in particular depression. And it is so helpful for any of us who know someone who is in the throes of mental health issues and how we can walk alongside them even better. So I'd love for you actually to turn in a Bible, if you have one. There's some of the seats around you right now to 1 Kings 19. It's page 277. If you're in one of our rooms, you're using the Bibles around you, it's page 277. Just turn there, scroll on your mobile device. I just want you to see this. Normally, I put the passages here on the screens to make it easier, but today, I actually want you to turn your Bibles to it because it's a longer story, and I want you to see a few things. So let's go to 1 Kings chapter 19. And I want to give you a little bit of context here as you're turning there or whatever, and what you're going to see here in just a moment. This is a story about a man named Elijah. And Elijah was a prophet. And that means that he spoke for God. He was tight with God. He was committed to God. He was a man of deep faith. What he would do is he spent his life trying to help others to realize that any other God you run after, other than the one true God, is no God at all. In fact, there was this one, you got to read 1 Kings chapter 18 at some point. We're not going to read it here today, but it's well worth your time. It's a crazy story. And one day there was one of the local gods that they would worship in the time was a god named Baal. And in chapter 18, Elijah stands in front of all of these followers of Baal, and he lays down this challenge. It's actually pretty cool. He says, look, if Baal is truly a god, which he's not, but if he was, then let's do a little dare here. He goes, I dare you. He goes, put a sacrifice on the altar and then just pray to Baal. Ask Baal to burn up the sacrifice. And so they do. They put the sacrifice on the altar. They start doing these chants, these incantations. They spend hours doing this, praying, hundreds of them. Nothing happens because Baal is no god. So then Elijah steps in. He goes all Bruno Mars. He's like, watch me now. And he sets up a sacrifice to God. He puts it on the altar, and he just basically just says, God, please show up. Show up, show off, show them you're the one true God. And immediately God consumes the sacrifice, and it's obvious to everyone there that Baal is no God. There's one true God. It's this powerful, affirming moment for Elijah. It's literally a mountaintop moment. But everything turns really quickly because the queen gets word of it. Her name was Jezebel. She's not a good woman. And she gets word that the God she's led her people to worship, Baal, has just been proven to be a fake, a fraud. And so she makes this threat against Elijah, saying that she's going to kill him within the next 24 hours. And here's Elijah's response. Pick up at verse 3. It says, Elijah was afraid. Yeah, don't doubt that. He was afraid, and he fled for his life. He went to Beersheba, as a town in Judah, and he left his servant there, so now he's alone. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree, and he prayed that he might what? Die. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life, for I'm no better than my ancestors who have already died. Now, I just want you to think about this description of Elijah. This strong, God-honoring, passionate leader, this man of God. And here he is with all of the markers of depression. Alone, so he's withdrawn himself from others. Apparently, he's not eating, as you're going to see here in the verse in just a moment. He's got a sense of despair and hopelessness that have washed over him to the point of not even wanting to live anymore. And one of the things I find interesting is that, we tend to see sadness, the emotion of sadness, we tend to see that as a negative emotion. We don't tend to give a lot of space for ourselves or the people around us to experience and to live in sadness. When someone shares great news with us, we're real good at celebrating with them that great news. And so we'll party and we'll say, hey man, let's live in this moment for a little bit. But when someone shares their sadness or their grief with us, oftentimes we don't really know what to do with that. And so we tend to just go, oh, it'll be all right. How about those Eagles, right? Let's move past this. And the effect that has on so many of us, even just culturally, is that so many of us, we've learned that real early on to just push down emotions that we see negative as like sadness. But here's the problem. The problem with stuffing emotions like sadness or grief is that they don't go away. They just get stored up. And men, and I'm not trying to stereotype, there's research to back this, but men, this is particularly relevant for us. Did you know that there's sociological research or studies that have been done that show that young girls in social settings are typically rewarded very early on in childhood? They're rewarded when they articulate feelings, bring things out, and work towards relational connectedness. So they're kind of made a part of the group in those moments. And then on average, little girls on the flip side of that, and I don't like this, but this is just kind of the facts, little girls tend to be discouraged or punished socially when they demonstrate assertiveness. That's been proven sociologically. On the other side, the same studies have also shown that young boys tend to be rewarded, as you would imagine, rewarded socially for assertiveness, but punished socially for articulating feelings and discouraged from relational connectedness. And here's my point. We learn real early on to not talk, to just keep stuffing. And I'll just tell you, man, for me, one of the darker seasons of my life happened when I was in the middle of a lot of transitions. We had gone from one kid to two kids. No one ever talks about that. That's hard for a lot of people. That was hard for us. We had moved homes. I had a couple of other stressors in my life at the time, and I felt like I just need to talk this out. I was noticing I was stuff on a lot of things. And it was coming out sideways. And so I went see a counselor and talk some of these things through. And I remember him at one point, I was talking these things through. I remember him saying, like, Jason, I think you're depressed. And I fired back real quick. I'm like, you're an idiot. Well, I don't pay you to tell me lies. There's no way I'm depressed because I'm not crying all day. I'm not depressed. I don't sit around and cry all day. I'm not depressed. I don't sit in the dark all day long. I haven't pulled the shades down. Like, what do you mean I'm depressed? And then he opened up my eyes to the difference between overt depression and covert depression. Overt depression demonstrates itself through all the typical ways that you and I tend to think of depression. If you were going to WebMD, it's going to be all these overt depression signals. Apathy, loss of appetite, increasing isolation. That's what I was thinking about. But covert depression manifests itself in masked ways. Physical aggression, alcohol abuse, domestic violence, failure in intimacy, self-sabotaging careers. See, we may not be drawing the shades down and sitting alone in the dark, but there's lots of other ways we tend to mask and numb sadness. And the truth is that we cannot move towards healing while stuffing sadness and grief. Won't happen. And here's where it gets real toxic, all right? It goes to a whole nother level on this one. See, culturally, we have issues with sadness and we don't really know how to grieve real well. But where it gets toxic is that some of you've bumped into religious people who at some point in life, they spiritualized all of this as if sadness or seasons of depression are signs that you weren't trusting God enough. The part of what it means to be a person of faith is just to rise above all those negative emotions. Be joyful, pray harder. Doesn't work that way. This is why I love stories like Elijah's. A man of deep, passionate faith who's in the dark, in a dark moment, pulling the covers up over his head, not wanting to get out of bed. And Elijah's not alone in the scriptures. This is not a one-off in the scriptures, guys. It's all over. I wouldn't have enough time to go through all the stories of people who go through this. I'll just show you a few examples. This is Psalm 88. The darkness is my closest friend. You think he's depressed? That's a prayer written down in the Bible. The darkness is my closest friend. There's another one. This is Psalm 6. All night I flood my bed with weeping, drenching it with my tears. That was written by King David, who was also called at another time in Scripture a man after God's own heart. In other words, God said, out of all the men out there, man, that guy gets me. That's my guy right there, and he's in the throes of depression. Here's another one. This is Jeremiah, a prophet, another prophet. He says, why was I ever born? He's talking to God. He's praying this. Why was I ever born? My entire life has been filled with trouble, sorrow, and shame. That's real. And here's the last one I'll just mention to you. He was despised and rejected, a man of sorrow, acquainted with deepest grief. You know who that was written about? Jesus. If someone ever tries to sell you on the idea that if you're truly a person of faith, you wouldn't be experiencing mental illness, you wouldn't be struggling with depression or anxiety and fear, nothing could be further from the truth. Elijah falls into this long line of people of deep, abiding faith who struggle with depression to the utter extreme. Guys, Elijah's suicidal. Can we go there? Can we talk about this, or are we going to be a fake church? Let's talk about it. Remember what he said? I've had enough, take my life. I don't want to live anymore. In other words, he's saying that the only reason he won't take his own life right now is because he's in the desert and he doesn't really have a way to do it. So God, you do it for me. And let me just take a second and address suicide. Because some of you, you have been told a lie at some point about suicide. Some of you grew up in religious settings that told you that anyone who commits suicide automatically goes to hell. Guys, listen, you can read every page of the Bible from here through eternity, and not once will you ever find that idea in the scriptures. It's not true. You know what is true? The work of Jesus Christ alone is what brings us back into relationship with God, not any works of our own, good or bad. And for those who have placed their trust in Jesus Christ and his work for them on the cross, not even suicide can erase the saving work and grace that was poured out for them. I've had family friends who I know to be deeply devoted to Jesus, who took their lives. And we should be real careful about assigning judgment over anyone who gets to the point where taking their life feels like it might be the best option. You know, if someone gets to the point in life like Elijah did, of even considering taking their own life, I don't think it's selfishness. It's because it feels like they are standing at the edge of a burning building, and you have the flames behind you, and they are burning you, and you have a jump ahead of you that will bring certain death. And at some point, it feels like the terror of dying by jumping is less than the terror of living with the flames. And I realize that there's someone here, and you know what it feels like, that the flame's creeping in on you right now. You've considered taking your life. You're considering it. And I just want to beg you today, I want to beg you to reconsider. Please, I'm begging you, do not make a permanent decision based on a temporary circumstance. I know it's so difficult right now. I know it is so difficult to see a way out. But there are no circumstances that will not eventually change. And you do not need to see a way out in order to reach out. And I want you to know that I am praying for you today, and I have been praying for you this week, that the power of the Spirit of God would give you the strength that you need to choose life. And that you will experience today, and you will experience today, where this dark place will feel like a distant memory. And I want you to know you are not alone. You're surrounded by people who've wrestled and struggled too. Elijah was there too. And he gets so real, he gets so raw and honest with God. And look at God's response. I mean, God's response to Elijah is absolutely stunning. Look at verse 5. Then he laid down and he slept under the broom tree. But as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him, get up and eat. He looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and he drank and he laid down again. And then the angel of the Lord came again and he touched him and he said, get up and eat some more, or the journey ahead will be too much for you. So he got up and he ate and drank, and the food gave him enough strength to travel for 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. There he came to a cave where he spent the night, but the Lord said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? I just want you to notice something. There was no rebuke from God. There was no shame. There was no moment God sitting there going, Elijah, how dare you? I mean, you've been walking with me so close, and now you're going to let this get the best of you? How dare you? Elijah said he wanted his life to end. And look how God responds to him. He feeds him. He gives him rest. He gets Elijah to talk. Remember, he asked them, what are you doing here, Elijah? And he gets Elijah up and walking. Now, one of the things I love about this, I just love how infinitely wise God is. If you were to ask any counselor or therapist or psychologist today, every single one of them would tell you that these are the foundational pillars for mental health right here. Diet and nutrition plays a significant role in mental health. Sleep patterns play a significant role in mental health. He gets Elijah to talk. counseling, opening up, not stuffing it, getting it out so you don't have to stuff the sadness. That's critical to mental health so you can get the right resources so that when needed, you can receive medication that can help you reclaim a baseline of mental health. It all starts with someone who can provide perspective. That's what he's doing here. He's getting Elijah to talk. And lastly, he gets Elijah up and walking, exercise. There's been tons of research on this, but one study in particular in Britain found that regular aerobic exercise has the same effect as antidepressants. And God comes along with such compassion, such a loving God, and cares for Elijah, providing for him the environment to reclaim health and walk out of the throes of depression. And what God does next, man, it has massive implications for any of us who are here today, and you're not necessarily struggling in this moment, but you know someone who is. This next passage has huge implications. Look at verse 11. Skip to verse 11. God told Elijah, he was in this cave, and he says, go out and stand before me on the mountain, the Lord told him. And as Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was the sound of a gentle whisper. And when Elijah heard that, he wrapped his face in his cloak and he went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Guys, what drew Elijah out of his darkness? What ultimately drew Elijah out to the edge of the cave? It was a whisper. There was the sound of a gentle whisper. I actually think this is very helpful for any of us who are walking alongside people who are struggling with the soundtracks of depression. Because we want so badly, don't we, to draw them out of their darkness. We know that they are not who they used to be. We can see it. Our heart breaks for that. We know that they're off. We don't know how to help. But what I want you to see is that what isn't helpful is bringing the fire and the windstorm and the earthquake, putting your finger in their face and just telling them to snap out of this. Just talking a little bit louder, telling them to think positive. Just yelling louder, all the cliched answers to really complicated issues. It was the whisper that ended up drawing him out of the darkness of that cave. Let me ask you a question. How close do you have to be to someone for them to hear a whisper? You have to be right next to them, right? Side by side. And if we want the people that we love the most to take a step out of darkness from the soundtracks that they're struggling with, it might start with a willingness on our part to get side by side with them. With a meal, with a whisper, with questions that get them talking. God meets him in the cave and whispers, but God doesn't leave him there. He has something new for Elijah, and he gives him hope. Look at verse 15. Then the Lord told him, go back the same way that you came and travel to the wilderness of Damascus. And when you arrive there, I want you to anoint Hazael to be the king of Aram. And then I want you to anoint Jehu, the grandson of Nimshi, to be the king of Israel. And I want you to anoint Elisha, the son of Shaphat from the town of whatever that town is, to replace you as my prophet. Now I want you to think about this for a second. God is giving Elijah something incredible here. He gives him three things. God gives Elijah three things that provides a path out of depression, a path out of this dark place that Elijah finds himself in. Did you see what he gave him? First one is this. God gives him work that matters. He gave an assignment. He tells Elijah to go and anoint a new king. I got a job for you. It's not going to get done without you. I need you. God says, I'm not done with you, Elijah. I know that you're in a dark place. I know this is not going to define your life. If you're struggling in the darkness of depression today, God is not done with you. God's not done with you. There is a work that God has for you in this world that only you can do, that He's designed for you. You have purpose and meaning. God also gives him relationships. He gives him Elisha. He gives him a partner, someone to walk with him. And if you're in your own dark place today, relationships will be your way out. Let our church be that for you. The group that you're in, open up. The team that you serve on, let us walk with you. And last thing God gives Elijah, He gives Elijah the choice to bring meaning to the pain. See, we don't have a choice over the pain that we experience, but we can choose whether we'll bring meaning to that pain. And whenever we face dark seasons, we tend to focus so much on this question: how can I get out of this? You ever been there? Ever struggled? Ever been in a dark place in your life? You're like, how can I get out of this? How can I get out of this? But there's another question we could ask. And it's, what can I get out of this? God, what can I get out of this? What will God be able to do in my life as a result of going through this? What ways can I help others who've gone through this as well? And we know that Elijah chose to bring meaning to his pain. He made that choice. And you know how we know that he did that? Because we have the story. 2,900 years later, we're still talking about this. He was alone in that cave, wasn't he? He was alone in the wilderness, wasn't he? So what does that mean? That means he went and told this story because he wanted others to know. I've been in the dark, and it will not last forever. And that's why I love this little statement that's made about Elijah in verse 19. After all of this happens, one translation just says it this way: he departed from there. He departed. He took a step. He moved forward. He walked out of that darkness. It is possible. But remember where it all started. With Elijah choosing to open up, to get honest about what's going on the inside. That's where it'll start for you too. With the choice to open up, to talk, to ask for help. And some of you, you're going to start that journey toward healing this week. In fact, for some of you, the most important thing you're going to do today is you're going to go to lcbcchurch.com, you're going to click on that soundtracks banner, and you're going to find resources that our church is providing, including counseling services near you in your area. You're going to reach out to the church. That's going to be the most important thing you do today. And it's going to get you started. It's time to depart from where you've been, to turn to the God who can heal your soul. Because guys, there is no one more qualified to heal your soul than the one who created it. Which is why the statement Jesus made in Matthew 11 is so powerful. When Jesus said, come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest. Who could be so bold to promise that? Who could be so bold to promise rest other than the man of sorrows? The one acquainted with our deepest grief. The Son of God, who knows pain and loss and darkness. The one who knows when this moment will pass for you and the light will shine again. Our church is full of men and women, full, who are experiencing this peace. And I wanted you to hear Grace's story. She's a part of our church. And how she has fought the soundtracks of depression and responded to that loving whisper of God calling her out of darkness.
When I was in college, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. It started really small, almost unnoticeable. I had a complete loss of appetite. It was hard for me to get out of bed in the morning or at all eventually. I stopped going to my classes. I stopped going to any social events and completely pulled away from everything that I had been doing before. I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. I pretty much stopped going to church. I completely lost interest. There was probably a good few months where I wasn't really talking to God. I wasn't interested. I would say I was a pretty strong believer going into all of this. And I think that's actually what made some of my diagnosis and that journey so difficult. I was fantasizing about ending my life, and it really just took over everything. Probably just about every thought that went through my head was related to how could I escape? How could I make this stop? How could I stop being a burden? I got so comfortable in the darkness that the darkness became my home. I was starting to feel more comfortable there than maybe in areas of light or towards healing. So when I wasn't doing well, I actually kept a lot of journals during that time. And this is where I really got a lot of my thoughts and feelings and prayers out. I found comfort in the violent storm, in the steady attack of my own mind betraying itself. The confusion becomes so strong that numbness is the only escape. I had a few people who were trying to walk beside me through it, but I was very good at pushing them away and still isolating myself. It reached the point where, against my will, my parents had to intervene. They took my keys and said that we were going to the hospital, which was probably one of the hardest moments of my life so far. And I can't imagine it was any easier for my parents either. Yeah. So that was a little bit of a kickstart to me, at least realizing that I needed help. I want to live. There is so much more. I want to live. I am worth healing. I want to live so I can love and be loved. I want to live. My life is not over. I really started to dive deeper into my relationship with God, and I was able to find some healing in that relationship with Him and some reconciliation, and also able to look back at what I had gone through and see that He didn't leave me. As much as it felt like it when I was in that space, looking back, I know that if I was truly alone and if He wasn't beside me, I probably wouldn't be here. I still have to work hard, even today. So I still go to therapy, I take medicine, I have a really strong support system around me. Anytime there's an opportunity to learn more about mental health or connect with others, especially within the church, I will take that opportunity. I think that it's going to be a lifelong process of healing from this. I know I will make it through this, but I don't fully understand why you allowed it to happen. Why does mental illness exist, and how can we fight against it? I know that I can ask God those hard questions, and I know that I can, wrestle with Him, and that He's not afraid of it, and He's not afraid of my questions, and He's not afraid of mental health, mental illness, anything that comes with it. He's always gonna be there to listen and be there with open arms. My name is Grace, and I am a life changed by Christ.
I know it's all you got to just be strong And it's a fight just to keep it together, together. I know you think that you are too far gone, but hope is never lost. Hope is never lost. Hold on and don't let go. Hey, hold on and don't let go. Just take one step closer. Put one foot in front of the other. You'll get through this. Just follow the light in the darkness. You're gonna be okay. I know your heart is heavy from those nights, but just remember that you are a fighter, a fighter. You never know just what tomorrow holds. You're stronger than you know. You're stronger than you know. So hold on and don't let go. Hey, hold on and don't let go. Just take one step closer. Put one foot in front of the other. You'll get through this. Just follow the light. One step closer. Put one foot in front of the other. You'll get through this. Just follow the light in the darkness. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. Ooh. And when the night is closing in, don't give up and don't give in. This won't last, it's not the end. It's not the end, you're gonna be okay. When the night is closing in, don't give up and don't give in. This won't last, it's not the end. It's not the end, you're gonna be okay.
Listen, I believe that for some of you, today is that whisper from God, standing at the edge, whispering to you. The edge of that cave that you felt in, alone. And he's saying, I have something for you. I know you. And I know it's felt overwhelming. I know the soundtracks have been loud. I know all of that. And I love you. And even though you can't see it right now, God is saying, I know you can't see it right now, but I know the day that you will laugh again. It's coming. And he's saying, I know that you can't see it right now, but I know the day that you won't feel so overwhelmed anymore. It's coming. And even though you can't see it, I know when the darkness will not feel so heavy. So he says, come to me. I have work for you to do. You have purpose. I have people that I'll surround you with. I'll bring meaning to this darkness that you've walked through. So open up, open up, open up. Reach out. Take one step. Take one step closer. If that's what you need today. Listen, if there's anything that you'd like to pray about today, please don't hesitate. If you're in any of our rooms, to come down to the front left. We've got people down there who would love to have the privilege of praying with you. If you're online right now, you can always leave a prayer request for us anytime on our website, and we'll be praying for you this week. LCBC, may the Lord bless and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord show you his favor and give you his peace. So glad you guys were here. See you next week.